It is time for the one and only, the premier, the only official podcast of Pro Rodeo. Your Chute Bosses are ready, so let's give it a go and talk some rodeo.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Chute Bosses, the official podcast of Pro Rodeo. Tanner Barth and Tracy Rink here. Tracy, we're 1 week closer to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo presented by Teton Ridge. Can you believe it's already here? It seems like just yesterday, the Pro Rodeo regular season ended. We were focusing on who's even going to get in the top 15, and now we're getting closer to crowning world champions.
Well, it's like Thanksgiving's right around the corner, and then we know we're going to Vegas. It's just insane how fast things happen, and then all of a sudden it's a marathon. It's like Groundhog Day. And then we crown world champions. But it's just so weird because, like, if you weren't involved with the PRCA, like I wasn't involved until I worked here, how, long the NFR is. It's like the Super Bowl for 10 nights. So it's super exciting. I can't wait to go. Vegas is fun. It's always been a great time. So it should be an unfold with some great drama.
You got all your clothes ironed, packed, ready to go?
That someone else handles that side of stuff for me.
I can tell.
It's too many clethes. If I was the guy ironing, I'd look like I slept in my car, which I didn't.
You do most days anyways, but it's fine. It's fine.
I don't need this today.
Let's roll on our Pro Rodeo props. A little bit of breaking news here, Tracy. If people don't know, we're recording this Chute Boss here on Wednesday, November 20th. The breaking news coming down, the Teton Ridge is officially, I guess, growing in their Pro Rodeo partnership here. They announced that they had acquired the Cowboy Channel, the Cowgirl Channel, and the Cowboy Channel Plus app there from the Gosh family, I guess you would say, was who's kind of running it after Patrick passed away, and pretty huge news in the sport of rodeo.
Yeah, I mean, we thought something might be coming down the pipe. We weren't sure if Cowboy Channel was going to stay involved, and, I mean, Teton Ridge had been interested in the past, and now we'll see it's all new to everybody now. I mean, Teton Ridge does a lot of great things. I mean, they have a lot of endeavors, outside of rodeo and different things, and they love the Western way of life. They've been involved with us in other things as well. So I'm excited as the next guy because, I really don't know what's ahead, but I'm excited to see what transpires.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you have to look back at what the Cowboy Channel's done for the sport of rodeo, and it's been huge. And now you say, with Teton Ridge taking over ownership of that, where can they grow it to? What other opportunities are they going to be able to provide? I know they said that they're also really excited about the streaming side of things because that's going to give them an opportunity to expand because they've done some of that streaming in past. We've seen some of those videos on YouTube or social media and whatnot of them doing great pre- and post-game shows across the country. So I'm curious how they're going to bring that to the Cowboy Channel.
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboy Channel was like the Western way of life's ESPN, essentially. It had never been there. We'd never been live on rodeos. It was always the NFR, and it was always at like 2 a.m.
Almost saved rodeo during COVID.
Yeah, and honestly, Cowboy Channel was a great endeavor for the PRCA in terms of we were being paid to be on TV. And
for the first time, right?
Yeah, and for the first time ever. Everything that we did in the past, to my knowledge, outside of maybe something that I'm unaware of, like the NFR, it was always a time buy, meaning we had to pay to buy a slot on TV. That's why it was always on like ESPN2 at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're buying time. So Cowboy Channel changed the dynamics of that. What Teton Ridge will do, who knows? I mean, they've got the capabilities to do a lot of great things, and we'll see what. I mean, obviously they have great interest or they wouldn't have been involved. It'll just be, we'll just kind of play it by ear and see what moves they make.
Well, they've already been a presenting sponsor of the NFR for the past 2 years. So, they're just kind of growing their involvement in the sport, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And, we mentioned as part of this acquisition, Teton Ridge, they're going to have the exclusive licensing agreement with the PRCA. So, the over 600 sanctioned rodeos domestically and internationally that the PRCA has, including the NFR, what will it look like this year? So, an exciting time for rodeo nonetheless. You obviously, it kind of gives you a little bit of reflective back on what Patrick did, with them ultimately selling to Teton Ridge. But, I'm excited to see where this thing goes.
Yeah, and Teton Ridge has its own cable channel on DirecTV. I think that's a big change because that channel comes with a lot of packages on DirecTV. It's not like an extra channel you'd have to buy. It's INS. And I think that would really help because, you wouldn't necessarily have to sell the like Cowboy Channel had to sell a lot of its stuff separately, or you had to buy a different packet of a cable package to get the Cowboy Channel. So, I mean, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, obviously, Patrick was a visionary, and he did unbelievable things for the sport of rodeo. And now, let's see what the future holds. I keep saying I think the sky's the limit. on what Teton Ridge wants to do, because they understand the involvement and they've been involved in other things like this before.
Yeah, and they'll get their first chance to get that first big show underway at the National Finals Rodeo. And we want to remind you that this episode of the Chute Bosses is sponsored by Las Vegas, the home of the NFR. For 39 years, you can come see why Vegas is the sports and entertainment capital of the world. This December, when Pro Rodeo's best, saddle up and ride at the NFR just 2 weeks away, Tracy. And that's going to kind of lead us into our main talking point here on this episode of the Chute Bosses. We're not going to have a guest joining us here today. It's just kind of you and me bouncing back and forth. Maybe Andrew will chime in. I know he loves chiming in when he gets the chance to. But we're just going to talk a little bit about what we're expecting from the NFR, what really we are watching for, because there's a lot of big storylines headed into the NFR. And the first one I want to talk about off the top and jump here, Tracy, in the short round segment is, how about 20 world champions in the field? And we look even closer into that, into specific events. 5 out of the 15 world champions come from tie-down roping.
Yeah.
So 1/3 of the field has won a world title, and that's kind of the event that's wide open headed into this. Obviously, Shad has a lead, but there's a lot of world champs nipping on his heels. So let's start with that. What's your kind of outlook on what you're looking for in tie-down roping?
I would love to say I think Shad's going to win it. He's got all the talent in the world to win it. Shad just needs to not let Shad get in the way. Meaning, he's so good at what he does and he's so aggressive, and I know that's a mindset. He needs to somehow back himself out a little bit to a point to stay in the average. Because even if you don't get a great time, but you rope all 10, he's just got to stay in the average. I mean, because the average pay is $86,000. I mean, so if you're knocked out of the average, there's a guy that's going to catch you that's 5 or 6 or 7 in the standings because you don't get a check in the average. I mean, the average is such a big factor. Not that it wasn't before, but the second guy in the average wins $70,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the first 2 guys, you could be so far down. You could be like number 14, win the final round, and finish second in the average and have a chance to win the world. That's why, unlike any other NFR I've been to, a lot of round 10s you kind of mapped out and you thought, well, this will happen and this guy's going to win. With the average paying as much as it does now, even in the top 2 or 3, I don't even think any of those anything will be decided before round 10.
And it's one of those events where, you hear a lot of guys, I'm not going to go out there and change anything.
Right.
So you do wonder, can Shad go away from his, all or nothing, because he wins a ton of big rodeos.
Right.
Like he said, it felt like this year he won every big rodeo just because he's so good in crunch situations where it's a one-header and you got to go out there and, beat the guy, be faster than the guy next to you. So that'll be interesting to watch. But another thing, we mentioned those 5 world champions in the field. How about 3 out of the top 4? So obviously you have Shad up at the top. You got Haven Medjid right behind him, who broke the NFR average record a year ago. Then you go with Ty Harris, a guy that's been up and coming, chance to win the world. And then right back to him is your 2023 world champion, Riley Webb.
Right, they're all great, and they're Tough Cooper's down towards the bottom.
Tough Cooper, Shane Hanchey,
and those guys all know how to win world championships. I know Hunter hasn't, but obviously Shane's won the one in 2013, and Tough's won 4, and those guys know how to win. A lot of it comes down to, can you get hot early? Can you be consistent? Because you don't want to feel like you get out of the race. I mean, we've talked to Lefty and guys. You don't want to, like, first couple you get a 75, and all of a sudden you're down in the dumps. And then we see guys drop out of the average, and all of a sudden Vegas becomes a vacation, and they're just there for the ride. And it's just going to be so intense. And a lot of it depends on the draw. Guys will say, Shad didn't do this or Tough didn't do that. But
didn't have the calf to do it.
And you realistically think the best I can do is an 8.5 or whatever it may be. And that's what you have to do. If that's what you've drawn, that's the key to the experience that I see based on all the ropings we've covered. Is you have to know what you've drawn and what you're capable of getting on that calf. Because if you think you're going to get a 6.9 on a calf that's realistically probably an 8.5, it's probably not going to happen.
Might
for
end
a
up
reason.
missing.
And then you miss and you're out of the average. I think it's going to be highly compelling. I just would hope, because Shad really hasn't had a great NFR. All the times he's gone, the time he won in the world in 2020, he did everything to try to lose it just because he had a tough NFR in Arlington. And he ended up winning by like $350 over Marty Yates. So I think I would hope the experience he has is to back down a little bit. But Haven, look at those guys. I mean,
Haven had the best NFR we've ever seen from a tie-down roper last year, and he still wasn't able to catch Riley Webb.
And Riley Webb had the greatest season we'd ever seen to that point. And Riley roped great at the NFR. So ultimately it's going to come down to, if Shad doesn't rope great, or Shad ropes even solid and doesn't win the world, it's not necessarily a knock. There's so many guys behind him that just happens. And it's like anything. Some guys shine in the moment, and some guys it's meant to be. And that field is just probably, it might be the best field we've seen in years.
Yeah, 5 out of the 15, but that doesn't include guys like Hunter Herron, right there in the mix. Like Marty Yates, as you just said, there's
Marty Yates is a guy that swings for the fences every swing. Yeah. I mean, he was Shad Mayfield.
He's a guy that could go out there, and if he could put 10 together in a row, he could win the world title.
And he was Shad Mayfield before Shad Mayfield. I mean, literally, Marty Yates he's that 6'7" guy. He's that 6'8" guy. That's what they do. And so it's going to be extremely exciting. The cool thing I want to watch in that event specifically is the competition within those guys. Because you saw last year when Haven got that 6'4", and then Shad comes out and gets a 6'1", and obviously bad luck, the calf kicks out. But you can just feel, I mean, you walk in that arena, you can feel the adrenaline, like, oh my gosh, like, and that would be the hardest part for me.
Finding a way to calm yourself
down. Oh my gosh, like I gotta stay in the average. Don't try to be a hero. That would be the hardest point, because you get caught up in the yell, the roar of the crowd and everything, and all of a sudden I'm gonna go 5'9", I'm gonna go 6 flat, and next thing you know you miss, and it's like, oh my gosh, like what did I just do?
Well, and you felt the tension even last year between Riley and Haven.
Yeah.
Because it was just like at every moment, Haven would come out and make a great run, and we knew he was leading the average. And they're like, man, if Riley even makes one mistake here, Haven's going to end up winning the world title. And he never made that mistake. And it was just like, they were just taking step by step throughout the NFR. So that's going to be fun to watch. And we mentioned Shad, so let's go back to the top of this whole thing, Tracy, and our first world champion that'll be crowned. That's in the all-around. Another compelling race. One of the first years we've seen in, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years where I think there's 7 different guys going to the NFR that have a shot to win the all-around world title. Yeah. And granted, some Shad Mayfield maybe have a little bit of a larger lead than those guys in the 6 and 7 holes, but there's a really good list of competitors that could win a world title in the all-around. Junior Nagata, Coleman Proctor, our boy Wasey Shala.
Yeah,
like there's
Tuff's in that mix.
Tuff,
I mean, Tuff would have to have a great NFR, but he's won it before, and that's what there's other layers here. That's what I'm saying with Shad and other guys. I mean, Coleman Proctor, he has a great NFR, and all of a sudden they're winning rounds. Not only is he winning rounds, he has a chance to win the all-around. Junior's won the all-around before, and the year he won it, he didn't win a world championship. He won in 16, and they took second as a healer. So I mean, it's all right there in front of these guys. They're all aware. And, I mean, I don't think it would change. The all-around wouldn't change really anything you're doing in your event.
No.
Because ultimately the money you get is going to go towards the all-around anyway.
But if you start having a lot of success in your event, then all of a sudden you find yourself right in the mix for an all-around world title and maybe two gold buckles at the same time.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's crazy because Stetson Wright's obviously set the bar for that, and before that it was Trevor. I mean, every single year it was Trevor. I mean, Trevor Brazil was winning every all-around for, from like 299 to 2015, and Tuff was in that mix a little bit. Junior was in that mix, and then along came Stetson. So we really haven't had, at the NFR, we really haven't had a race for the all-around necessarily.
Not to the finish anyways. Yeah.
Right. It's kind of been, we kind of knew who was going to win it as long as they didn't falter. Yeah. And that's kind of how it played out. So this year it adds to the drama. And you add all the money that's involved. I mean, there's more money than ever. So I think that's going to be compelling TV, that these people are going to realize, wow, Coleman Proctor is a great team roper, but man, he's in the mix. And Wasey Shala, the one thing people need to realize with Wasey Shala is, he may win $99,000 on one night, but the ground money doesn't count toward the all-around because every guy can't get ground money. So understand that. Shala may have more money than other guys win if he does have a great NFR, but his ground money won't count towards the all-around. But it's just a crazy race, and it's exciting because it hasn't been this way. The whole time I've been here, it's never been that way.
Well, and we always knew it was going to be so tough to catch Stetson because he was qualifying for the NFR in 2 events.
Right.
So he had double the opportunity to win money, and, this is the first year in quite a while. I mean, even dating back to, Trevor and those guys where, he had the NFSR and he had the NFR.
And he had
this year it's
just team roping and calf roping.
Every guy that has an opportunity this year is only in one event. So can you be the best at your event for 10 days? Because if you are, you might have a shot to win 2 gold buckles. So.
Yeah, and that is what's I can't even remember the last time
somebody didn't
just one event.
Was Junior when he won the all-around world title? Was he just in team roping?
Yeah, at the NFR
he wouldn't have qualified.
Yeah, because he qualified in he did some calf roping or something.
Yeah, a little won some money in tie down, but
to get because he knew he had a shot because Trevor wasn't at the NFR that year. But so it's been a while because most of the times Tough won when he had steer roping and other events, and
then Stetson obviously.
Stetson has his rough stock events. So yeah, I mean, and Shad honestly doesn't concentrate enough on steer roping. But the crazy thing is Coleman Proctor was 16th in the steer
he was
roping.
really close to making that NFSR.
He was about 3,000 away. He makes the NFSR.
Yeah.
I mean, at the NFSR, this past NFSR, Scott Snedeker won $82,000 just at the NFSR. So, I mean, I'm assuring that's on Coleman's list to do, and I know he's mentioned
close
that to
this
us.
year, yeah.
So that's why it changes the dynamic if you can qualify in 2 events. But everything that we want to happen is going to get solved in Vegas. There's no predetermined, he's going to walk in and you're crowning the champion.
Stetson didn't win any money last year and he won the world. So.
Right, and so that's not going to happen this year, which is exciting because you don't want to have a guy back into it necessarily. And obviously that wasn't Stetson's choice because he got injured, but that just tells you how good a year he had.
Yeah, and another event I want to focus on because this one I think is about as wide open as it gets. Let's go to the bull riding. Not a single world champion in the entire field. And so we're at a point right now where, somebody's going to win their first world title. Josh Frost, a guy it's gotten close so many years. Can he finally get over the hump? Clayton Sellers coming back has had a great year. Or does it go to a young gun like TJ Gray from 2 years ago? No one really even knew who the kid was.
Right.
And now he's number 1 in the world. And Cooper James and, Wasey Shawla. Jeter Lawrence. There's no one there, Tracy, that's won a world title. So, first of all, I want to know, how do you think these guys are going to handle being in Vegas? Because bull riding is a whole different story, And the other ones, most of the time in saddle bronc and in bareback, you're going to ride your animals, It's tougher to win the average because it comes down to draw. In bull riding, it comes down to having the grit to stay on. If you can stay on 4 or 5, you're probably going to get an average check.
Yeah, I mean, Kai Hamilton proved that last year. I think he rides 6.
Yeah,
I think. And you ride 5 or 6, you're going to be in the top 4 in the average. I mean, just based on numbers, because we've only had 3 guys ever in the history of the PRCA. Well, 2 ride 10, and then 1 ride 8 when it was just 8. So, I mean, that tells you how hard it is. The NFR has been going on since 1959. And you've had 2 guys ride 10. And every guy says, I'm going to ride all 10. And ideally,
I always love that quote.
Sure, you want to. You got to have the confidence that you're going to ride all 10. You're not going to say, I think I'm going to ride 4 and it's going to be these rounds. I mean, you're not that guy, but it's really hard. I mean, because you have unpredictable 1,700-pound ranked bulls that want to throw you off. And these are our best bulls that you see at the NFR. And nothing against smaller rodeos. They get stock, but the stock, they're there for a reason. They're NFR stock. And they pick the stock. I mean, we talked to Josh Frost when we did the highway win with him, and it's a big vote, and all these people are involved. They try to pick rideable bulls, meaning they want to get bulls that they can get scores on.
But then they have that eliminator pin,
then they have the eliminator pin. And why do you have the eliminator pin? To eliminate guys.
Proves who's the best.
I mean, and so the biggest thing that I've noticed in all the years I've covered bull riding out there is understanding the marathon that is bull riding. Because you can get bucked off 3 or 4 and think, I'm out of the mix. And you could win. You could be the only guy that rides, or you could be 2 guys that ride. One year, Josh Frost won $42,000, and Kai Hamilton wins $99,000. The only guy to ride. I mean, you're 1 ride away and 1 round away to be right back in the mix. You might not win the average necessarily, but a $100,000 check could go a long way towards you having a chance. And so those guys, I think, having short-term memory is probably the best thing they could have. If you have a bad ride, think, okay, it's a new day. If you have a great ride, how do I continue my momentum? Because Vegas, you get caught up in those bright lights, and these guys are young. I mean, what were you doing?
It's a very young field.
And what were you doing when you're 21 and 22 and going to Vegas for 10 nights and having a hotel to stay in and partying? And I mean,
free drinks.
There's a lot of distractions, and so that's part of it. And I've talked to Clayton Sellers about it. Those guys get caught up in the moment sometimes, and all of a sudden your body starts shutting down around 9 or 10, not because you might not be in shape, just the will to go because you've just gassed yourself out. You're living like a rock star. And all of a sudden you still got to get on a bull. So there's a lot involved, and you may be the guy that's the best in shape and not ride a bull, and the guy that's out every night rides bull. I mean, it just goes both ways, but the young guy, my only suggestion to them is understand the marathon.
Yeah, and I mean, are you going to wake up on that Tuesday, you're getting ready for round 6? How's your body going to feel?
Yeah.
You're going to be able to get out of bed? You're going to be able to, push through
Get
because
kicked or stepped on.
Because these young guys, these first-time NFR guys, even some of the guys that haven't been to the NFR in a while, there's nowhere else in the world you find yourself competing at that level for 10 nights straight.
Not 10 nights. I mean you might
even
ride
Cowboy Christmas, you might get 6 or 7 in a 4-day stretch, but not 10 consecutive nights every night.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That's the biggest difference is, oh, man, my back hurts, my leg hurts. And, I mean, they're never going to opt out outside of major injury. But, yeah, I mean, that would be the hardest thing is how do I get back on? How do I mentally prepare? Mm-hmm. How do I keep myself in shape? I mean, and some things you can't predict. There's just so many, and I didn't realize there was no world champions. I wonder when the last time that's been.
I was going to ask you that, Tracy, because
every year I've done it.
Unless I'm wrong, I'm not wrong, am I? I'm just trying to think. There's no world champions in that mix.
I'd have to give a close look at the field, but I don't believe so because obviously Sage Kimsey was in it for years and guys like that.
Stetson.
So I mean, those were the two main guys every year that there were mainstays.
Yeah.
So
not a single world champ in that field. I don't know when the last time that's happened.
Yeah,
It might be a good thing to look up.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even know if it's ever happened because back in the day, every guy was a world champion.
Seemed like it, yeah.
At least one guy was. It's just the average age of it would be compelling to me too because I bet you the average age
low this year
is probably 24.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Dustin Bouquet, a little bit of an outlier at that upper age, but yeah. Would you have a question for us, Andrew?
I just kind of wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Tracy said about, this field. I think it's going to really come down to, the savvy veteranness of Josh and Clayton to see if they can get it done. And for Josh to be able to kind of get that, go buckle for his family legacy. And then it's going to come down to, the two young. I think Jeter Lawrence and Wasey Shaw are going to be battling out as well. I think those 4 guys are people that you got to kind of watch out for in the bull riding, especially Clayton and Josh. I think they're going to be super hungry. They've been there before, done that, and they're gonna know hey, I got to do this to get this job done. So I think that's gonna be really interesting to watch.
We also got to think about Josh's injury. Has he fully recovered from that shoulder injury? Because if not, that'll drive you nuts in Vegas.
Well,
I also forgot about Chase Doherty as well.
And Chase Doherty's he was at Calgary. Mm-hmm. I mean, all those guys that have ridden well, and it's not that they all could be world champions. They're obviously proven. A lot of them have been in the top 5 in the standings.
Yeah.
Everything has to kind of fall together like anything. If you can ride, if I was realistically looking at it from the outsider, I would think if I can ride at least 5.
I was going to say half of it.
Yeah, if I can ride 5, I'm where I want to be. Maybe I've ridden 5 by round 8. Or
give yourself a chance.
I just want to have a chance in round 10 because we've talked about this. Round 10, you can win $120,000 the last night of the rodeo. Mm-hmm. You could win. You could win more.
Realistically, you could win what, 180,000, 170,000?
Yeah.
Because you could win the average and you could be the only guy to ride.
But yeah, so I mean, you can win almost $200,000 in one night. That's what I'm saying. So
crazy.
You just need to stay in that mix, and maybe you're still only ridden 2 bulls and are the only guy to ride in round 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much different with bull riding because of the ground money. Because I mean, you can swing an additional $80,000 to $95,000 in ground money. So I mean, it makes everything different.
First time in a long time, I don't think we go into the NFR with what we say is a clear-cut favorite in the bull riding. So going to be fun to watch it.
Not at all.
Yeah. Going to be fun to watch it shake out for sure. And Tracy, let's get on to our last segment here. Zeke and Wagaspack, we're talking about 2 of the best. I mean, first ballot Hall of Famers, Zeke Thurston, Tyler Wagaspack. Can they repeat? Because it seems like Zeke Thurston, and I talked to him, he's like, I never really feel like I rodeo that hard. Yeah. He's like, I go to the big ones, I do what I need to do to get to Vegas in a decent spot. I think he's sitting 6th in the world right now, and Wagaspack obviously 14th. But these are just 2 guys that know how to win in the Thomas and Mack. And you start feeling them as a competitor behind you, in your rear view mirror, as they would say. You start feeling a little bit of pressure, and I think maybe we saw a little bit of that last year in round 10 when, in the steer wrestling, everything kind of crumbled around Tyler Wagaspack, and he came out of the rubble as the world champ yet again. Yeah. Do you see repeat there, or is that going to be tough to see? Wag's going to be tough.
Wags would be tough because coming from 14, I mean, we've had guys come from 14 and 15 in events, and that was before the money was even as good as it is. Can he do it? Yes, because he knows how to win in Vegas, as you said. a lot of guys don't know how to win like he does. He's had things happen in round 10 the last 2 years that I'd probably have a better chance of hitting the Powerball than him winning the world. And he had everything come together. But part of the reason that comes together is you do your part.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't even have a chance.
You got to be prepared when that opportunity comes.
I would be really surprised if he can pull this one off. That would be one for the ages, because then he'd become a 6-time world champion. He'd tie Homer Pettigrew as
past Branquinho.
Yeah, and past Luke Branquinho, the legend. He's second all time, or tied for first all time on the list. That would be one for the ages. Is it possible? Yes, because of the money. He's going to have a lot of things start happening earlier. Because before, when it happened, he was right like top 5.
Yeah, top 5.
So, I mean, he didn't have to have the, turn the world upside down to get in the mix.
He's going to have to win some rounds early.
Yeah. And historically hasn't won a ton of rounds. Mm-hmm. It's always come late that he's really done what he needed to. In terms of Zeke, I mean, I think he can. I mean,
how
Zeke,
can you doubt the guy?
It's like kind of like Sage Kimzey.
Yeah.
When Sage was on his run, like every year you thought, this year he's not going to do it. And then he just shows up and he was consistent and he was great.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden at the end, who's the world champion? And Zeke, the crazy thing about Zeke is he won in 16 and 18, and then he's just gotten better with age.
And then what was it, 22 and 23 now?
Yeah. I mean, and usually guys don't have that far of a separation. Usually it's those windows of 16 through 18 or whatever it may be, and then they're top 5 for a while. And all of a sudden he went, 16, 18, and then now he's 22 and he's looking for 22, 23, 24. I think the biggest thing with Zeke is a lot of those Canadian guys look up to him. He's like a father figure behind the chutes with those guys, and he feeds off their energy.
Yeah.
He looks younger at the NFR.
He's a fierce competitor,
and
too,
he
no doubt.
loves to win.
He does.
Like, he's a real laid-back guy and great to talk to, but he's kind of got that Joe Montana mystique to him.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like mysterious, but he's just so good. I could see that happening. I mean, there's great saddle bronc riders, and I'm not going to, say this guy can't win or this guy. Can Zeke do it? Yes, because he's so good and he's so consistent.
Well, and he's just one of those guys that you mentioned, the model of consistency. I think we're closing in on him, overall, obviously, world titles-wise, but one of the best rough stock cowboys we've seen in the last couple of decades, because you talk about his success in the United States, but then talk about his success in Canada. Yeah. I think he averaged his 5th Canadian world title this past year.
In October.
No other cowboy's ever done it. 4 world titles, 5 Canadian, never been done, even though all the great saddle bronc riders have come out of Canada over the years. But yeah, I wouldn't doubt Zeke Thurston. He's like I don't even know how to say it. It's just quiet. He just does his work quiet. He doesn't say much, doesn't get too excited, and then like you said, he's right there, and you're just like, oh shoot, Zeke just won the world again, or won the Ram Top Gun award.
And especially with that money, I know we keep saying it, but if you're consistent, the average now more than ever is going to reward consistency. Mm-hmm. So if you're the second guy and you're winning $70,000 and you win the final round and you win $33,000, that's $103,000 just on round 10.
Yeah.
If you're second in the average, and even third in the average is $55,000.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what I'm saying, that it's like it's an $85,000 swing even if you're just third in the average in round 10. That's why there's so much at stake that these guys have to be in the mix to give themselves a chance, because if you get no scores, I mean, it's going to be really tough, especially in saddle bronc, because the guy that wins saddle bronc every year is
your top 6 is probably riding 10.
They all ride 10.
Yeah.
I mean, they might not have 10 of their best scores, but they're all going to ride 10. Mm-hmm. It's going to be compelling. I mean, and in the past, Stetson was always there.
Well,
guys like that.
Who I'm looking forward, and we talked about this here in the office. Look out for Ryder Wright.
Yeah.
Guy's had a huge year. Yep. He's just been right there, and it's been a couple years since he's been on top of the world. Yeah. But, he has just had a slow progression this year. You're never really saying, Ryder Wright wins this huge rodeo here and there, but he's just quietly inside, I think, the top 3 of the world standings right now.
He's number 2. Yeah, I was literally going to say, someone that's flying underneath the radar I feel like we haven't talked a lot about is Ryder. And I've watched a lot of his rides this year, just clipping and doing content and stuff like that. And he's riding really, really well, no pun intended.
He always rides
he's been
well.
Healthy.
Yeah, he always rides well. It just came down to maybe he didn't get the draw he wanted in Vegas. He's always been in that top 5.
Even Stetson had always told us, Ryder's
he's the best
saddle bronc going down the road. He gets overlooked because of who? Stetson.
Yeah.
Because Stetson won a saddle bronc riding world championship. And the one year Stetson won it, he beat Ryder by, $800 or $1,000 or $3,000?
On the last night.
On the last night. So, I mean, yeah, I would never forget about Ryder Wright. I wouldn't sleep on him because he's proved that he can do it. His family's proved they can do it. And it'd be great for him. I mean, not that he needs to step out of Stetson's shadow. He's a 2-time world champion, and he's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer. But it would, I'm sure, be cool to him to add number 3.
And then keep an eye on Damian Brennan. Can the Aussie finish off what's been a record-breaking season? You know, that'll be fun one to watch for sure.
I did have a question, though, about what y'all feel about bareback. Because I feel like it's going to be, a battle at the top again with Rocker and Keenan, but I feel like Leighton has a good chance as well, and even RC and Dean Thompson as well.
Well, one thing about Rocker is he's got to find that consistency, as Tracy said, because he really came out last year strong, won the first 2 rounds, and then he kind of, went by the wayside and just Pope.
And he won one more round. He won 3, but the problem was
hit a missed mark out in between there, didn't he?
The consistency in between there. Like you get a no score, no ride, and then all of a sudden guys start passing you. And who passes him? Guys like Jess Pope, guys that are consistent. And Rocker knows this. I think Rocker with age.
I think more than this year, more than any other year this year, he knows that.
Right, because, his dad's won a world championship in steer wrestling. His grandpa, Bobby, they've probably had this talk with him numerous times, but if there's any year you need to be ready to roll, you go in as the season leader. You put yourself in prime position. You can't control everything, but you just don't want to be the guy that loses the world title for yourself. There might be someone that has the amazing NFR
you
that
have to
passes
shake their hand
you,
and say, good job.
Yeah, like tip your hat, and that guy just beat me. And you can live with that and sleep at night. Don't be the guy that cost yourself the world championship. And I don't think Rocker will do that based on the things that he's done this year.
Yeah.
And the thing about Rocker, and it all depends on his draw, he's electric.
Yeah.
When he's on, it's full steam ahead, and he's electric. But when he's off, and then he loses his cool at times, and he's admitted it. It's no secret. He's just got to compartmentalize. If I don't place in a round, but I got an 80, I'm still in the mix. Still in the mix. Those are the things that come into play. Like, don't play yourself out of the rodeo because you thought you deserved an 88 and you got an 82.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch to see how it shakes out. Trace, what are you most looking forward to at the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo this year?
I'm just excited, and I know it sounds cheesy, the all-around race, because we've never really had much to talk about with the all-around race, because it's always been Stetson Rider. It's always, ever since I was here, outside of juniors one year when Trevor didn't compete at the NFR, it was always Trevor. Like, Trevor. It's not if Trevor was won. Trevor's already won. How much money's Trevor gonna win? How many rounds is he's won, countless rounds at the NFR and all his 54 qualifications and everything else. So we've never had that is in the mix. Does it make us busier? Yeah, but is it more compelling? Yes, because for the last several years, we've always known that round 2, now we always have to calculate.
Yeah.
No one can catch him. Now it doesn't matter because there's no way even in round 10 it's not going to be decided before round 10. So that's what I'm most excited to see.
And I think for me, it's just the stories that come with the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo because, throughout, we never know what to expect.
Right.
When Jess Pope won it, we didn't think Jess Pope was going to win the world title. We thought, is this going to be another title that Casey wins, and whatnot. Last year, Stetson, we were just like, we knew he was a little dinged up going in, but he has such a huge lead. And then Kai comes in, gets knocked out, comes back, wins the world, has this great night. So I just think it just comes down to the storylines and enjoying really what shakes out during those 10 days because we realistically have no idea.
Right.
We never could have imagined that it would start last year the way it did. Unfortunately, the tragedy there in Las Vegas, and we have to push back the NFR a day, and we have 2 rounds in one night, and it turns into one of the most historic nights that Pro Rodeo's seen with Kai Hamilton. So, there's just that's one thing I look forward to is just the uncertainty and who's going to come out on top, who wants it more in Vegas. So.
Well, as you say, Tanner, the biggest thing about the NFR is the unpredictability.
Yeah.
We can talk all night long about Rocker and all these guys and Zeke and, should they? Yes. Do they have great chances? Sure. But there's just so much unpredictability in Las Vegas because just the way things are.
So many factors.
Yes, factors, variables, different things people do. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff we don't know that goes on.
Oh, yeah.
So that's part of it. Like, oh, my gosh, he's riding terrible, or what's he doing? We don't know those backstories.
Did you know he just lost $100,000 at the casino?
Yeah. Well, sometimes we don't know, or guys a lot more injured than he's giving out to be, and so you don't ever know the true back. It's kind of like NFL guys, like, man, that guy looks slow. Like, what's going on? And they don't report him because they don't want to, or they don't want to give an opponent advantage. So And Cowboys of all guys don't want to give anybody an advantage. So that's part of the story too. That when I say that the unknown is because a lot of these guys may get dinged up, and it's not like we live in the Justin Sports Medicine room. We get kicked out of there more than we live in there when we try to find out about injuries. So that's definitely a factor as well.
Yeah, going to be fun to see how it shakes out, and a lot to be decided December 5th through the 14th there at the Thomas and Mack. And a guy that is kind of having a storybook writing himself a little bit is Buck. What do you think? Is he going to plan to make it out to Vegas? Last year he tried to sneak on the trailer, and I think Tyler had to.
Tyler, our maintenance guy, he got drug around the parking lot a little bit, got scuffed up a little bit, but he shook that off because he's a hero. That is what Buck is, a true American hero. He's got some things planned for Vegas. I want to see him in Vegas because if there's ever a place that Buck would fit in is Las Vegas. Because you go to a casino, and you and I have been there, and guys, part of the show, there's people that do stuff in Vegas that they'd never do anywhere else. And I know the saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But when you spend as much time as we do when we go there, you see that guy. You see the guy with sunglasses.
Buck would fit right in.
Buck fits in. So I'm looking forward to Buck fitting in. And Buck might get a new haircut, maybe a little buzzsaw cut, maybe something different. We'll see.
I like it. Let's go to Buck. He's got your Pro Rodeo word of the day.
I'm Buck, official correspondent for the Chute Bosses, the official podcast of the PRCA. My word for the day is speed. As in, team reppers have to display a lot of speed when they're competing at the NFR to win money. When it comes to bucking speed, I have to display my speed to get away from law enforcement officers for things I may or may not have done.
Another 10-4-40 for Buck.
Cowboying is in our blood. Cowboying is in our bruises. It's in our rain-soaked jackets. In our calloused hands, tested by barbed wire and rope, our mud-stained boots to the crown of our resist-all hat. You live out west for even the shortest time, and there's one thing you learn. You can't pretend out here. Resist all. We live it every day.
Welcome back into the Chute Bosses podcast. It's our NFR preview episode here today, Tracy, just kind of breaking everything down. And we talked a lot. We talked for about a half hour in that first segment just about what we're expecting in some of those world title races and whatnot. Can't wait for that to all shake out. And we just want to let you all know this will be our last episode before you can join us after round number 1 of the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo. We'll sit down there and have a chance to chat and talk about how things started in Vegas there on Thursday night. So a lot of exciting things coming your way here on the Chute Bosses podcast. But as we always do, let's jump right into our ProRodeo Hall of Fame spotlight, Tracy, and let's go to one of the true legends, one of the first legends of the sport, 1989 inductee Bill Pickett. The Hall of Fame steer wrestler. He's actually credited with founding bulldogging, or better known as steer wrestling nowadays. They said he used to go out and grab the lip of the steer and wrestle it to the ground, or bite the lip of the steer. Some weird stuff going on, but Bill Pickett, man, he's a true legend in the sport of rodeo.
Yeah, I mean, if you're known as the inventor of steer wrestling, because you see back in the day, they'd have like cars riding along and they'd jump out because they didn't understand conceptually what they were going to do, and he kind of figured it out early. And obviously, it became a huge event. But yeah, he's a legend. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, way after his time that he got in the Hall of Fame, but well deserved.
Can you imagine biting the lip of a steer? I think I'll pass on that.
Yeah, no.
Andrew, you got something?
Yeah, I actually read that he was one of the first people to jump off a horse and bulldog an actual bull, too, down in the Hall of Fame.
Wouldn't surprise me. Dude was tough as nails. 1907, he was hired as a cowhand there at the 101 Ranch down in Oklahoma. And then he participated in the Miller Brothers 101 Ranch Wild West show. They went on the road, and they were doing all these great things for nearly 25 years, Tracy. And, he's just one of those guys that maybe sometimes gets forgotten a little bit about, because he was so early. I mean, his first job was in 1907, so it just shows you when Bill Pickett was born and how long it took for him 100 years later to get into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's good that you have history to preserve what he did, because a lot of people would forget him. He's got displays down in our Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame downstairs, and it's well-deserved. A lot of people forget him, so you have to bring up his name. But steer wrestlers, if you mention his name, I'm sure they know who he is because he invented the event.
Yeah, and he's just one of those guys that, he kind of set the precedent before there was a precedent of what this event's going to be like, and, how many people are going to be able to turn this into what we have now. He probably never imagined that we'd have 3.4-second runs back in his day, and now we do.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even imagine back then that would seem like a good idea.
Yeah.
jumping off.
Still doesn't seem like a great idea.
Jumping off a horse at like 20 miles an hour onto a moving animal. I mean, it's kind of like, I know T.J. Hooker did things like that, and when he was on T.J. Hooker jumping off cars and landing on his feet, which is unrealistic, but it just seems so unrealistic to want to do something like that. And then now what it's progressed to today.
Turn into a ProRodeo Hall of Famer because of it. Andrew, you want to go ahead and get queued up the Historic NFR Moment of the Week? We'll let this play here on the screen behind us. Does it have audio, Andrew? Yep, we're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and let that audio play, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Historic NFR Moment of the Week.
4 points in Omaha. We have two 92s in the lead. You got a left-handed bull rider and a left-hand delivery. And we got the magic. And we got the people of Las Vegas. 17,000 strong. Get behind Mikey.
Oh, yes.
Come on.
You're there, Mikey.
We got it.
Thank you, Daryl.
What a ride there, Tracy, from Mike Moore. It took us back to the 2003 NFR there in round 2, and what a moment it was. A 92.5-point ride on Powder River Rodeo's Mojo Dippin. Andrew, can we turn down that audio here just a little bit? But what a round that was. Yeah. And back then it wasn't maybe as good a ride as it could have been, but it's one of those things where back then 92.5 points, that was almost unheard of at that point. And then we started to build up, and obviously we've had a bunch of Mr. USA 95-point rides and different things like that.
Yeah, it's just crazy. In that round alone, Teton West won with a 95 on /T Rodeo Snake Eater. There was also a 92.5, which was more. Brian Richardson 92, Greg Potter 92, and Zach Brown 90.5.
Have you ever heard of anything like that before?
I know we've had 90-point rounds. A few guys like 18 to 20 when we were giving out a lot of 90-point rides.
Yeah.
I don't remember that many because that's 5 guys ended up having that many 90-point rides. Imagine if you were Zach Brown and had a 90.5 and got a paltry check. Yeah, it's crazy. And then there's another 95, Mike White, that's tied for the round record. That's what's crazy. Teton West had a 95, and Mike White duplicated it since then, and that's the round record is 95. But 95 is almost like, for bull riding, it's almost like perfect ride.
Yeah, and that 92.5-point ride was on Powder River Rodeo's Mojo Dippin. So definitely a great NFR there for bull riding, and what a round there in round number 2. I'm sure one that'll never be forgotten, that's for sure.
Moore finished 3rd in the world, I believe.
Yeah, he did that year.
And that's when kind of the Expos thing came about.
Was it?
Those guys started going to the Expos events to get more money. And, man, I just can't. I'm baffled by that many 90-point rides. I mean, I knew that's happened, but 5 in one round is just crazy.
And you throw out your best ride of all time, and then you get beat. Mike Moore, 92.5, that would be the best ride that some guys have ever had in their career. And then here comes Terry Don, I'm going to go 95.
Yeah, I'll spot you that and go 95. Yeah. And because 96 is the world record, I believe, with Cody Hancock on Mr. USA. So, I mean, that's just a crazy ride, but it's exciting. I mean, you see the excitement even back then in 2003 because Vegas is Vegas, and it's going to be bigger and better now. And that's why, I mean, you get so amped up for the bull riding. It's like when we watch these performances and all of a sudden you're looking at the clock because they used to be 2-hour performances on the dot.
They're still around there
but
somewhere.
But they're right around there with advertising because it's live and they push it. But, yeah, I mean, all of a sudden you start looking at the clock and, oh, my, bull riding. Are you ready for some bull riding? And then everybody gets all amped up. So just the level of excitement is cool.
That's when we come over there and chest bump in the press room, right? Are you ready for some bull riding? I come over there. Let's go, Trace.
Get it going now.
Yeah, I like it.
Watching that whole round, too, that's probably the best pin of bulls I've seen since I've been here. That whole round in 2003 was pretty intense because a lot of the Cowboys got booked off, and then obviously those 5 90-point rides, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, maybe a lot. I think things have changed. The bulls have changed. Maybe back then that was a 92.5-point ride. I look at it right now, we're maybe looking at a 89-point ride, something in that. Just because there wasn't much hopping there, it was more of a spinner. But it just shows the progression of rodeo and where bulls are at now. But Tracy, let's jump into our viewer question. This one comes from Jonathan on YouTube. Wants to know who holds the record for the most consecutive NFR qualifications. And this one's a little bit different because obviously we're not just the NFR. We also have the NFSR. So we have to find a way to go there with that and look at the qualifications from that. We just can't take steer ropers out of it. So, if we were including that in the list, it would be Guy Allen with 32, followed up by Rocky Patterson, who just called it a career with 25, and that is insane. That would be like me my entire life, going to the NFSR every year.
Right. It just speaks on longevity. I mean, it's crazy to me what these guys can do for an extended period of time at such a high level.
And a lot of it you see, obviously it's going to be rough stock guys, or it's going to be timed event guys, because rough stock, if you can find a way to go for 15 or to 20 years in a row, that's almost unheard of. Stetson's going to have a lot of qualifications, because people don't realize out there when they say, oh, Stetson Wright qualified for the NFR, he picks up 2 qualifications.
Right. And
so
that's why Trevor had 54, counting steer roping.
Exactly.
And it's like, my gosh, some guys want to go once in their life, and has guys 54. But it's just so difficult. We see how close these guys get just to make the NFR, and then to make it in 2 events. And timed events is different. Roping events. The thing that I noticed with the change in roping events that might factor in of guys doing it for an extended period is there's so many guys that are younger now and more athletic, like especially in steer roping.
Steer roping and tie down,
And tie down, that guy that used to be hanging around when he was in his early 40s, maybe, I don't know that guy, he can still win money and go to rodeos. Making the NFR is a little different, because as we've said in tie down this year, look how many of the young guys, there's 5 world champions, but there's so many young guys.
Yeah, that's 100% the truth. And if you want to break that down a little bit further, Jonathan, if we're just talking the NFR in Las Vegas, or the NFR in general, it would be team roper Doyle Gellerman, who I believe just went to the Hall of Fame, right, Tracy?
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
He won the world with D. Pickett.
Yeah, he qualified for 22 straight NFRs from 1976 to 1997. So that's impressive in itself. So I was thinking of 54. Stetson qualifying in his 2 events, he would have to go to 27 NFRs to beat Trevor Brazil.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But Trevor, the thing with Trevor is he qualified in 3 events. So, you qualified.
And they're all timed events, too.
Yeah, and they're all timed events. So it's a different level. The rough stocks obviously got to be judged at a different level. Ty Murray, I believe, had 20 qualifications, because of 2 events. But it's just different with rough stock, because you're not going to – Ty Murray's one of the few guys that qualified in 3 rough stock events, recent memory and modern. And most of the time, he didn't go in those 3 events in the same year.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot more difficult.
Well, maybe Stetson will pick up bareback riding or something.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
That would be his shot.
And that, speaking of shot, my CB Nation asked me, my nickname, one of my many nicknames, they call me the Shuffler. Okay. And that hangs with me at the office, the Shuffler. That's because I pick up my feet so well.
Yeah.
And I drag, and everybody knows.
So did they used to call you that back in the day too, or just as this came on in the recent years?
Well, I'll go to a backstory. My mom used to tell me, like, why don't you pick up your feet? And I just would tell her, like, why? Why do I have to?
I'm lazy. Yeah.
And not that I was a lazy person. I just why? I can walk better if I just shuffle.
He's still the fastest man I've ever met.
Fastest shuffler you've ever met.
You'll miss him. You'll lose him in the office if you don't have a bell on him, that's for sure. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Chute Bosses. We appreciate you all jumping here. Trace, any final words before we wrap this thing up and get ready to go out to Vegas?
Just listen to Viva Las Vegas, round 1. I know it's cheesy, but it's just so exciting. It never gets old. These guys winning world championships doesn't get old. Getting the opportunity and being blessed to work here at the PRCA and getting the opportunity to cover the NFR we're there for 2 weeks, but 10 nights of the best rodeo action in the world.
And we'll see you just in about 2 weeks. We'll have a special edition of the Chute Bosses presented by Husky Trailer Parts. You won't want to miss it, but that's going to do it for another episode here from Colorado Springs. Until then, keep on rodeoing.
He's addicted to danger, ruled by passion and pride. To pain and fear he's no stranger, but his lust needs to be satisfied. Hooked on an 8-second ride.